From Spam to chocolate to salmon, eating healthy isn't as simple as it used to be. But we rounded up a list of some of the most unhealthy foods in the world, and some of them will surprise you. Butter isn't exactly the boogeyman it was made out to be in past decades, but for the sake of your health, you may want to consider limiting the amount you eat. Food and diet experts told Eat This, Not That the primary issues you'll face with butter are its large amount of saturated fat and high concentration of calories. Over time, eating butter frequently or in large quantities can lead to weight gain or heart disease, so take it easy with the butter to stay healthy. Fried foods in general are a risky choice for your long-term health, and French fries are sort of the poster child for that. Fries are one of the many popular foods that have been labeled as potential carcinogens, meaning they might increase your chances of developing cancer. Meanwhile, the starch in potatoes breaks down into sugar, which is another health risk to consider. Research suggests that French fries can increase mortality, so it's not a bad idea to cut back on how often we eat them, and drowning them in sugary ketchup won't exactly do you any favors either. There are so many sugary cereals on the shelves and so many beloved flavors that it can be hard to pick, but ultimately, their sugary, processed ingredients are all pretty similar, and they're not the best things to be shoveling into your body. As the UK's National Health Service puts it, cereals high in sugar, salt, or fat can lead to weight gain and high blood pressure. Plus, they may contribute to tooth decay. It's kind of shocking that this is the primary breakfast option for many children, and that many of us grew up on these sugary cereals. Who doesn't love a scoop or two of ice cream now and then?
2 scoops, sir?
2, make it 3. I'm not driving.
Ice cream tastes sweet, but it'll leave a bitter taste in your mouth to know how bad ice cream can be for you. Most ice cream flavors contain high amounts of fat, calories, and sugar. SF Gate says that the milk fat content of ice cream will generally range from 10 to 16%, with milk fat being a high cholesterol saturated fat. So be careful, because ice cream is one food that is best eaten in moderation, if at all. You shouldn't be surprised to hear that bacon isn't good for you. Bacon gets its distinct bacon flavor from additives like nitrates and nitrites, and according to The Guardian, all this processing leads to a potentially carcinogenic food. Then there are the nutritional facts. According to Time, just 4 thick slices of bacon can pack in around 240 calories and 40% of your daily value for sodium and saturated fat. If you eat less than 4 slices in one sitting, that's not the end of the world. But who does that?
What I said was, give me all the bacon and eggs you have. Do you understand?
If you're looking for a food that's packed with saturated fats, sodium, and bad for heart health, look no further than American cheese. Technically, it doesn't even meet the legal definition of cheese, which is why it's sold as a cheese product. Although it's a staple in many sandwiches and melts beautifully, American cheese might be one of the worst cheeses for your health. According to Delish, American cheese is so highly processed that it can last 6 months in the fridge, and all the sodium and additives can have health consequences in the long term if you eat it frequently. Most of us have fond childhood memories of Pop-Tarts, but as adults, we've learned that they're not the best food to be eating. According to USA Today, Pop-Tarts are just one of many processed foods that contain a chemical known as TBHQ. This preservative extends the shelf life of foods, but it can also cause harm to the immune system. And whether frosted or unfrosted, Pop-Tarts contain around 200 calories each. They don't exactly make you full either, so it's best to stay away. Swearing off soda can be one of the best decisions you make, as one Pop Sugar writer found out firsthand when she quit for a year. Insider states that soda has been linked to tooth decay, obesity and diabetes, and even depression. Soda is loaded with high fructose corn syrup, which is believed to cause your body to generate more fat and cholesterol and lead to a fatty liver, among many other negative health effects. Giving up a soda habit won't be easy, but CNN recommends choosing alternatives like water or unsweetened tea for the sake of your health. Are those pudding snack packs we eat with lunch actually bad for you? Well, one Hunt's 3.25-ounce pudding cup alone contains 100 calories and 12 grams of added sugars, so it's definitely not a guilt-free snack.
You know I like snack pack. Why can't you just give me a snack pack?
Pudding only needs a few ingredients, but to make millions of individual cups uniformly presentable, producers mix in a range of artificial colors, flavorings, emulsifiers, and preservatives. Some of those, like sodium stearoyl lactate, have potential to negatively affect gut bacteria. They may be tasty, but pudding cups are something you should avoid feeding yourself and your kids on a regular basis. You can split pancake syrup into 2 categories: the processed syrup made with high fructose corn syrup and the natural maple syrup that costs an arm and a leg, but neither one is particularly good for you. According to Consumer Reports, a quarter of a cup of maple syrup contains about 200 calories and more than 50 grams of sugar, maxing out your entire recommended daily sugar allowance.
The bunny gets the pancake.
Because it contains so much sugar, syrup should only be eaten occasionally in moderation. If you just have to have those flapjacks, the natural maple syrup is probably less bad for you. Energy drinks like Monster, Red Bull, Rockstar, and more can be really bad for your body. Like sodas, these fall under the category of sugary drinks that can lead to issues with heart health, increase weight, and put you at higher risk for diabetes. The healthy adds that due to the caffeine in energy drinks, they can also lead to dehydration. Be careful not to overdo it with energy drinks, especially if you're one of the people who drink these every day. Fresh tuna is a good source of important nutrients, protein, and omega-3 fatty acids. The bad news is that it's also a good source of mercury. Depending on the variety, tuna can contain a mean mercury concentration of anywhere from 0.12 to 0.68 parts per million, according to the FDA. And ultimately, this can be very harmful to human health. Life Science notes that mercury poisoning can occur with frequent exposure over time, leading to side effects like tremors, blindness, or even death. And since exposures add up over time, it's a good idea to be very careful to avoid eating excessive amounts. Many people are mac and cheese fanatics, but nutritionally, it doesn't have much going for it. According to Healthline, mac and cheese is high in fat, sodium, calories, and refined carbs, all of which can contribute to weight gain and other health consequences. It shouldn't come as a surprise that carbs smothered in cheese isn't exactly a healthy choice, so it's probably best not to eat it too frequently. Funnel cakes may taste amazing, but they're terrible for you.
Food shouldn't taste like this, I don't think.
ABC News says that one of these beloved fair and festival snacks can pack 700 calories and 40 grams of fat. Aside from containing almost no nutrition, funnel cakes are fried in oil and coated with sugar. It's the cake that's worse than cake. Some of the long-term consequences of eating fried foods are weight gain and increased risk of diabetes. So next time you're at the fair, it may be better to just enjoy the smell. Surprisingly enough, milk isn't actually that good for you. It's potentially even dangerous.
You fellas like a little bit of this milk punch?
It's important to say that the research isn't conclusive, but Discover magazine reports that milk may be linked to certain cancers, such as prostate and ovarian. It's high in saturated fat, and according to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, it may also cause high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and other health consequences. The increasing incidence of lactose intolerance may be a sign that we need to switch to milk alternatives. Maraschino cherries are bleached cherries that are sweetened and preserved in a chemical solution. Now, cherries are naturally healthy, but the processing involved in maraschino cherries lowers their natural antioxidants and doubles their sugar content to about 2 grams per cherry. The liquid they're suspended in is usually made with high fructose corn syrup, and their bright red tint comes from red 40, an artificial coloring that may lead to hyperactivity in children. Basically, they lose any health value they once had and become nothing more than another junk food. Beer is bad for you? Who knew? Well, everyone. For starters, beer is generally high in calories, which can end up contributing to weight gain if you overindulge. More surprisingly, it's also been linked to arthritis, according to Eat This Not That, and can have inflammatory side effects like joint aches and swelling. Apart from the nutritional concerns, overconsumption of alcohol comes with a ton of negative side effects.
We're going streaky! Yes!
Smoked meat comes in all forms, and it's difficult to make a blanket statement that it's all equally unhealthy. But nuance aside, all smoked meat involves, well, smoke. While smoke preserves meat and adds flavor per SF-Gate, some compounds in wood smoke are known carcinogens. Studies have linked smoked meats to incidences of other health problems, including stomach infections from E. coli and elevated sodium that can negatively affect blood pressure. And while any type of meat can be smoked, red meat specifically has been shown to be potentially carcinogenic, according to Moffitt Cancer Center. It probably won't shock you to know that hot fudge is not exactly a healthy food. In fact, considering that the primary ingredient tends to be corn syrup, it's quite bad for you. Now, most of us aren't sitting around chugging hot fudge, but if we were, the consequences could include things like weight gain, a higher potential for diabetes, and elevated intake of saturated fat and sugar. Hershey says one serving of its hot fudge topping contains 4 grams of saturated fat and 17 grams of sugar. Smucker's hot fudge topping has 4.5 grams of fat and 17 grams of sugar per serving as well. So there's really no good option here, other than cutting it out of your diet. Sloppy Joes used to be really popular, but lately they've fallen off a bit. That's probably a good thing. The tomato sauce used in Sloppy Joes usually contains a lot of sodium, while the meat is usually ground beef. And in canned especially, that comes loaded with a lot of fat and cholesterol. SF-Gate states that Sloppy Joes can be linked to health consequences like high blood pressure and diabetes. They suggest including beans or fresh vegetables to help you get nutrients if you eat Sloppy Joes, but you could instead just choose a healthier meal.
That's a sloppy sandwich.
I tried to warn you.
It's a common thread at this point, but it bears repeating. Deep-fried flour and sugar isn't peak diet food. With a health profile similar to a funnel cake, a donut is not much better than its carnival cousin from a health perspective. It certainly isn't a good choice for breakfast, at least not all the time. Donuts were named as one of the worst breakfast foods by Cleveland Clinic for their high sugar and calorie content. Delish points out that one donut can even contain your entire daily allowance of saturated fat, clocking in at somewhere from 6 to 11 grams in each one, depending on where you get it from. The main thing to remember is that a donut is an indulgence and should be consumed sparingly. Cheese, oil, and a tortilla. Throw some meat on it if you want, but that's what a quesadilla boils down to. For such a sparse ingredient list, you might be surprised to learn that just one quesadilla can contain more than 600 calories and 38 grams of fat. If you've just gotta have your dilla, insiders suggest using less cheese or substituting a rice wrap for your tortilla to make your quesadilla a bit healthier. As with other unhealthy foods, these are best consumed in moderation. Before you go and pop a bag of popcorn to eat while watching Netflix, try binge reading a few of those nutrition facts. A bag of Pop Secret butter-flavored popcorn contains about 70% of a person's daily value for saturated fat and over 40% of the daily value for sodium. Plus, a bag of buttery popcorn is highly processed and contains a lot of calories, anywhere from 400 to 600 calories per bag. More worryingly though, UCLA Health points out that the inside coating of microwave popcorn bags could contain perfluoroalkyls, or PFAS, which accumulate in human tissues and can lead to a host of health issues. Rock candy, also called rock sugar, contains more calories by volume than white table sugar, according to Livestrong. If you've ever made rock candy, you know that it's essentially crystallized sugar, although some types contain other additives, such as flavorings. Don't be fooled into thinking that there are any health benefits to eating rock candy, other than maybe a little stress relief or temporary happiness. It's very bad for your teeth as well, and you'll be making your dentist's life easier if you choose to pass on it. Hot dogs have a reputation for being tubes of mystery meats, which isn't exactly the whole truth, but they're still a highly processed food that often contain meat byproducts and trimmings, as well as a number of additives and preservatives. One study covered by USA Today suggests that each hot dog you eat can cut more than 30 minutes off your lifespan. Even worse, hot dogs were the least healthy of the thousands of foods included in the study. You could say they're more loser than wiener. For many of us, Cinnabon cinnamon rolls are like heaven on earth, and if you only eat them, say once a year, then you're probably fine. But weekly or daily indulgences can add up fast. According to the Cinnabon website, just one classic Cinnabon cinnamon roll contains 880 calories, 37 grams of fat, and 61 grams of sugar. This is definitely a diet buster, and easily one of the worst foods you can eat. So you're thinking about your health and decide to pass on the french fries in favor of onion rings. Onions are vegetables, right? That's true, but any nutritional benefits are voided once it's covered in batter and salt and fried in oil. According to the University of Rochester Medical Center, one portion of onion rings will contain more than 400 milligrams of sodium and 15 grams of fat. Also, Prevention says that a serving will have around 600 calories, plus more fat and sugar than french fries. They may be tasty, but in the long run, eating onion rings will cost you. They can be made in many ways, but pork rinds are essentially the byproduct of rendering lard. They're pieces of pigskin fried in fat.
Crunchy. Salty. Supposedly it cleans your teeth.
Although they've become a bit trendy with the low-carb crowd, pork rinds still aren't the healthiest snack to munch on. The things that make them the most unhealthy are the usual culprits: high levels of sodium and fat. The salt, in particular, poses a risk to heart health. According to Healthline, most bagged pork rinds have over 1,000 milligrams of sodium per serving, which is nearly half of the daily recommended limit. Fish quality generally depends on water quality, and imported catfish is a far cry from a cat you might hook in your uncle's pond. As Good Housekeeping explains, most of the imported catfish in the US is raised in Vietnam, where fish farms use antibiotics that aren't allowed in America, sometimes in dangerous levels. To make matters worse, most imported catfish is not inspected by US authorities once it arrives in the country. So if you're intent on buying catfish, do so at your own risk. But you should at least try to avoid catfish that is brought in from other countries for your safety and health. Buffalo wings are chicken wings that are fried and covered in a buttery sauce. You're not likely to confuse them with a salad, but just so you know, they're not good for you. Livestrong lists a standard serving of buffalo wings, a measly 4 wings, at somewhere around 330 calories, with an extra 200 or so calories added when you use a dipping sauce like ranch. You should also keep in mind that buffalo wings tend to be high in sodium as well, around 160 milligrams per 6 wings. According to Very Well Fit, there's no way the 2 sticks of celery served on the side will balance that.
Now, if you expect me to eat this, you're gonna have to supply me with some wing sauce.
Baklava is a Middle Eastern dish or dessert known for its flaky crust and sweet honey flavor. It comes in a number of varieties, often with pistachio, walnut, or other ingredients. You might not think that it's too bad for you as compared with other desserts, but actually, it's pretty high in fat and sugar. Livestrong says that just one slice or serving of baklava can contain more than 200 calories, 11 grams of fat, and 17 grams of sugar. It may taste amazing, but enjoying baklava can come at a cost. Grilled cheese sandwiches are commonly made with American cheese, which we've already covered as something that's not great for you. But no matter what type of cheese you end up using, ultimately you're still talking about cheese and bread pan-fried in oil or butter. Grilled cheese is basically a smorgasbord of unhealthy choices. Good for your taste buds, not for your body.
It's good.
You bet your ass it's good.
As Healthline explains, one grilled cheese sandwich can contain around 500 calories and also contains hefty doses of salt and saturated fat. Combine those attributes with the fact that there's very little fiber in the sandwich, and it's obvious that you shouldn't eat these too often. Potato chips are among the worst foods you can eat because of the high amounts of oil, salt, and sometimes even additives they contain. These can be especially bad if you eat them frequently, leading to consequences from excess fat and sodium consumption. Livestrong explains that one of the reasons potato chips can harm health is that they provide essentially no nutrients. You're just taking in empty calories without any benefits. Excessive potato chip eating has also been linked to certain health conditions such as diabetes and cancer. You might not think about sweetness when you think of bread, but bread actually contains quite a lot of sugar. The high glycemic index of white bread makes blood sugar levels spike after consumption, according to Eat This Not That, which is something that can lead to cardiovascular disease or kidney failure in the long term. Additionally, white bread is made with bleached flour, and Spoon University points out that the chemicals used in this process can be carcinogenic. Kinda takes the whole wonder out of that Wonder Bread, huh?
Okay, it's fine.
Refried beans are a traditional Mexican dish, usually pan-fried with lard and salt. Lard contains 5 grams of saturated fat per tablespoon, and depending on how the beans were made, they may contain a lot of it. In other words, that pile of refried beans on your plate could be full of unhealthy fat. Eating too much risks raising your cholesterol levels and potentially your weight. Burgers, steak, tacos, whatever your preference, you might want to consider cutting back on red meat. Recent studies have shown that some consequences of eating red meat include an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, and even death. With possible side effects like that, it's no surprise that vegetarian and vegan diets are on the rise as people become more conscientious about their health. The National Institutes of Health has weighed in on this as well, confirming that substituting foods like nuts and whole grains can lower the risk of death from health conditions associated with excessive red meat consumption. Eat This Not That awarded Cheesecake with the dubious title of Worst Dessert, which just goes to show you how bad it is for you. The reason it got this designation has to do with its high caloric profile. One slice of cheesecake can have more than 300 calories. Plus, cheesecake is highly processed and usually contains a lot of fat and added sugar. It can be fine every once in a while, but maybe consider having it only on special occasions.
All right, what are we having?
Although Jello is a fun food many people enjoy, it can be bad for you because of all the sugar and additives it contains. If you're not grossed out about the fact that it's made from animal bones, tendons, and other connective tissue, consider that it offers you very little nutritional benefit. If you like eating sugar that's swimming in artificial dye, this is great. Otherwise, that jiggle will never mean anything good. One of the worst pasta dishes for your health is Fettuccine Alfredo. The sauce is essentially butter, cream, salt, and cheese, making it very high calorie compared to other types of pasta dishes. The Food Network says a serving of traditional Fettuccine Alfredo can contain 1,200 calories or more, plus 74 grams of fat. Yikes! And remember, that's just one portion. Livestrong points out that since it's mainly pasta, Fettuccine Alfredo also contains a lot of carbohydrates, around 88 grams in each serving. Overall, this is not a dish you want to eat very often unless you're carbo loading for a triathlon. You may be someone who pours a bit of coffee creamer into your coffee every morning without thinking too much about it. If that's the case, you may want to consider switching it up. Black coffee has fewer calories, plus it doesn't carry the risks associated with coffee creamer. This creamy addition to your morning cup of joe sometimes contains carrageenan, a thickening agent made from seaweed that's known to be a potential carcinogen and can cause gastrointestinal problems, according to She Finds. Additionally, coffee creamer is often packed with added sugars. Canned ravioli and pasta definitely count as highly processed foods. The ingredients list for Chef Boyardee canned beef ravioli reads like a Joyce novel, and one can packs a whopping 34% of your daily recommended dose of sodium in only 180 calories. It also has some added sugar. There is very little fiber and not many other nutrients to make this carbohydrate and salt bomb worth adding to your diet. Churros are another delicious treat that you'll often find at fairs or festivals, and in the moment, they can seem like a great choice. Just be careful not to make it a habit, because these are 200+ calorie treats. Churros offer practically no nutrition, and if the oil they're fried in is reheated and oxidized multiple times, it can potentially contribute to heart disease and other health threats. In short, better not have these too often. Fondant is the stuff that covers fancy, professionally made cakes, like wedding cakes. It's pretty much pure sugar with some additives that help stabilize it and give it a smooth texture, most of which are different types of sugar. Professional bakeries use a mix with corn syrup most of the time, while homemade fondant is usually based on melted marshmallows. It's sugar mixed with more sugar. Is that technically even food? More importantly,
Is it cake?
Canada is known for poutine, an indulgent treat that consists of gravy over cheese curds and fries. As you might imagine, it's pretty bad for you. CNN says one order of poutine can contain more than 700 calories and 40 grams of fat. The high fat content plus the excessive amount of salt makes poutine a food to pass on. Most people wouldn't think of pork as a particularly unhealthy food, but it does carry some health risks. One study has shown a potential link between pork consumption and liver cirrhosis, while another study showed that eating pork liver could transmit hepatitis E to humans. With sausage and bacon being especially high in saturated fat, Livestrong suggests heart disease and cancers are also potential consequences. And if it's not cooked correctly, pork can also give you a nasty bout of food poisoning or a parasitic infection.
The Nacho Cheese Dispenser Warmer is here, making it quick and easy for you to enjoy hot nacho cheese.
Ever wondered how nacho cheese sauce stays creamy and soft? The trick is, it's a bit of cheese mixed with a whole lot of cornstarch and oil, then mixed with flavorings and coloring agents to make it seem cheesy again. Nacho cheese is so heavily processed that it lasts for years and hardly resembles food when you take it out of its packaging. Then there's the salt and fat. Rico's nacho cheese sauce contains 4.5 grams of fat and 540 milligrams of sodium, and that's before you add the fat and salt from the tortilla chips you're dipping into it. Eating a salad for lunch over something like fast food is always a rewarding choice, but to really get the full health kick, you have to be careful what you douse it in.
It's time to ranch it up!
Not so fast. Processed salad dressings contain a good deal of unhealthy ingredients, including additives and preservatives. According to Taste of Home, some of the unhealthiest salad dressings have more than 100 calories per serving, plus upwards of 200 milligrams of sodium. Too much of that, and the health value of your salad diminishes fast. There have been a number of articles and news stories over the years about how bad candy corn is for you. As a Halloween candy, nobody should really be surprised to know that it isn't the healthiest treat. It's primarily corn syrup and sugar, is highly processed, and should definitely be eaten in moderation. People are split about whether or not candy corn even tastes good, but the nutrition facts for Brock's candy corn should have us all in agreement that it's not worth eating. Just a 15-piece pack has 110 calories and 22 grams of sugar. Eel is another tricky fish due to the potential for mercury contamination. It generally has less mercury than, say, tuna, but one NIH study suggests that the older the eel gets, the more mercury it can accumulate. Since you don't exactly know much about the eel on your sushi from back when it was in the swimming stage of life, it's a small gamble as to how much of the metal ended up on your plate. Although it's on the safer end of the spectrum, eel should still be eaten in moderation if you want to ensure that you aren't exposing yourself to potentially dangerous contaminants. Another fried food you should be careful not to eat too much of is mozzarella sticks. They're yet another snack attack of saturated fat, sodium, and calories, and eating them too often could put you at risk for health issues such as heart disease and obesity, according to SFGate. While it's fine in moderation, these can have serious consequences if you eat them too much. Fried rice is one food that you wouldn't normally think of as being too terrible for your health, but the cooking oil is the real culprit. According to Healthline, most fried rice varieties have upwards of 300 calories and more than 6 grams of fat per cup. So if you're planning on having rice with your dinner, maybe try plain brown rice to cut out some of the negative ingredients. There's no denying that sausages are a delicious staple for people all around the world.
Who'd like a banger in the mouth? Oh, right, I forgot. Here in the States, you call it a sausage in the mouth.
We just call it a sausage.
While their culinary value is undeniable, they're not the most health-conscious protein choice. Sausages have been shown to increase the risk for some chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease and cancer. According to Eat This, Not That, sausages are also highly processed and contain a lot of sodium and saturated fat, so they're not the healthiest choice as the centerpiece of your meal. Granola bars seem to be an innocent enough option until you take a closer look at the packaging. These are often the healthy snack of choice for people on the go, but many granola bars are very high in sugar and carbohydrates, which can give you temporary energy followed by a crash. They also tend to be highly processed, and some may contain a large amount of fat, sodium, and calories. So although they may help curb your appetite until the next meal, they're not the best choice. Crème brûlée is a well-known dessert consisting of a custard base with a toasted layer of sugar on top. The main ingredients are cream, sugar, egg yolk, and vanilla. Overall, a pretty simple dish, but it does contain a large number of calories and a whole lot of sugar. There's a reason this dessert is considered indulgent, and it's best to save it for special occasions. Many of us are addicted to certain coffee drinks and can be very particular about the flavors we like.
I think your intercom's broken. It sounded like you said you didn't have any pumpkin spice lattes.
Yeah, we don't.
Whether your go-to is pumpkin spice, French vanilla, or anything else, one thing you should be wary of when you choose a morning pick-me-up is what ingredients are added to it. Flavored coffee tends to be significantly less healthy than plain black coffee. Spoon University warns that some of these chemicals used in these artificial flavors are linked to cancers, while others can even damage your DNA. Here's a reminder you probably don't need. Candy bars are one of the worst foods you can eat. They tend to have a very high level of sugar and fat, plus they are highly processed to make them shelf-stable. Even as an occasional treat, they're not great. In addition to potential health issues from sugars and fats, U.S. News & World Report points out that all that gooey chocolate and sugar is a recipe for cavities.
I like hot dogs.
Great.
But I prefer corn dogs because you don't need a bun for it.
Named one of the unhealthiest junk foods in America by Healthline, corn dogs are easily one food that you should try to avoid. Although for some of us they bring back fond childhood memories, they're still just a battered covered hot dog that's been deep fried. It's a bad food wrapped inside another bad food, and like most other fried foods, they are high in fat and salt. Combine that with the processed meat in the hot dog and you have a very unhealthy treat. Dextrose is a form of sugar that is often found in certain foods, especially packaged or processed ones. For example, it's one of the ingredients in Sweet and Low. But since dextrose is really just another type of sugar, it's easy to be fooled into thinking you're eating something healthier. Dextrose consumption over time can put you at risk for heart disease and diabetes. Milkshakes are one of those timeless treats that most of us have enjoyed at some point, but unfortunately, they're also very high in calories. Some milkshakes can clock in around 1,000 calories, making them take up around half of your recommended daily caloric intake. Plus, all the sugar and fat makes them a poor choice for regular slurping. In general, nuts are considered a healthy snack. One exception, though, is honey-roasted nuts. These tend to be high in sugar and are more processed than regular nuts, making them a less healthy choice. Livestrong says that honey-roasted nuts have 2 grams of extra sugar in each ounce as compared to other nut varieties. That's because of, well, the honey. Most roasted nuts are coated in salt as well, but the extra sugar in honey roasted makes them a 1-2 punch to the gut. So if you're craving nuts, try to avoid the ones that are coated in sugar. We've talked about the calories in beer, and we could go on and on about the sugar content of a lot of mixed drinks, but let's just cut to the chaser. Alcohol in general isn't your friend. Alcohol has unfortunately been linked to high blood pressure and heart disease. As the British Heart Foundation points out, chronic consumption is especially harmful to your health, so binge drinking or drinking on a daily basis shouldn't even be a consideration. Even having just a couple of drinks can put you over the threshold of your recommended daily caloric intake, leading to unwanted weight gain. Like many candies, gummy bears are something that you should definitely avoid. Obviously, all the sugar is a concern, but they're also specifically among the worst candies for your oral health, as Summit Dental Health warns. Their gummy texture causes them to stick to your teeth, which can lead to tooth decay and other issues. In the long run, it's probably healthier to try to eat a real bear, although we don't recommend that either. You might think that veggie chips are a healthy choice, but in comparison to regular potato chips, they aren't much better.
They do have a dash of vegetable powder, which seems mostly bad color, but they have about as much fat and calories as potato chips and a lot more sodium.
Their name can also be a little misleading, as the main ingredient in multiple brands is still either potato starch or potato flour, or both. Despite the name, vegetable chips aren't the best items to include on your diet menu. Molasses is a syrup used in a number of foods as a sweetener, like baked beans and ginger snaps. It's a byproduct of the sugar refining process, but Livestrong suggests that molasses is functionally similar to white sugar and contains a similar amount of calories per serving. Ultimately, sugar is sugar, and though molasses has some trace nutrients that make it slightly healthier than pure white sugar, it should still only be consumed in small amounts. Packaged lunch meats are cheap, convenient, and seem to offer an altogether decent meal option, but let us know if you want the real truth.
What's happening here?
Alright, well, for starters, packaged lunch meats are often high in salt and saturated fat, which we know by now can have serious consequences in the long run. But the New York Times reports that there's also a link between lunch meat consumption and colorectal cancer, while Cleveland Clinic says packaged lunch meats have been linked to obesity and heart disease. They suggest choosing fresh meat over prepackaged and processed meat. Some of our most beloved childhood snacks just don't look so good in retrospect. Saltwater taffy, for example, is made with sugar, corn syrup, butter, and salt. Just 7 pieces of saltwater taffy contain 160 calories and more than 20 grams of sugar. According to Very Well Fit, eating these sweets is one easy way to rapidly overdo your sugar intake. Not all fried chicken is made equally, but none of it is a health winner. KFC's chicken, for example, is very high in sodium, calories, and fat. Homemade stuff isn't usually much better, just by virtue of all the breading and fry oil. Even with fried chicken tenders, you're still getting about 500 calories in just one serving, according to Very Well Fit. As with other fried foods, fried chicken is best enjoyed in moderation. Beans are healthy, sugar is not. And if you coat your beans in sugar, well, you're losing out on a lot of the good stuff. One serving of Bush's baked beans, for example, has 12 grams of sugar, not to mention 570 milligrams of sodium. All that added sugar could potentially put you at risk for developing heart disease or even type 2 diabetes, according to Healthline. Plus, canned baked beans have other additives to be wary of, including those used for coloring. You might think that you're doing yourself a favor by avoiding sugar and going for an artificial sweetener instead. But unfortunately, sweeteners have their own downsides. For example, The Healthy says that the artificial sweetener sorbitol is digested especially slowly, and this delayed digestion can lead to bloating and gassiness, plus some extra time on the toilet. Aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, take your pick. They've all had their share of conflicting health studies. If you can skip the artificial sweeteners, it may be for the best. As you could probably guess, pizza is one of the worst foods in the world for your health. It's mainly dough, sauce, and cheese, which isn't an ideal start. Depending on your chain of choice, you might also find your slices dripping with oil from the cheese. Put it all together, and you're looking at potential weight gain and other health issues. Calories aside, pizza is also usually high in sodium and saturated fat. Though it may be tasty, pizza is not good for you. Handled and prepared properly, raw salmon is perfectly safe. The risks come when safety protocols are neglected. The CBC reports that one consumer pulled dozens of parasitic worms called nematodes from her sockeye salmon fillet. If these had been ingested raw, they could have caused gastroenteritis or infection. Fortunately, cooking or freezing at very low temperatures will kill these pesky parasites. In fact, the FDA requires fish to be frozen under specific parameters for it to be labeled sushi grade, so you don't really have to worry about parasites from a good sushi restaurant. On a different note, you also might want to steer clear of farmed salmon. Healthline warns that farmed salmon can be contaminated with potentially carcinogenic chemicals, though this issue has improved in recent years. Bread pudding is a delicious dessert, but it's also chock full of carbohydrates and sugar. The Food Network says that a classic bread pudding recipe could have 600 calories or more, plus 30 grams of fat in one serving. Thankfully, there are ways to make this recipe a bit lighter by using slightly different ingredients such as low-fat milk or unsweetened bread. If you go with the classic version, this is definitely one of those items that you want to eat in moderation. Oftentimes, we overlook the sauces we eat when considering our dietary intake, but that's a huge mistake. According to Very Well Fit, just 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce can contain 70 calories and 15 grams of sugar. This is not even counting whatever food the barbecue sauce is coating. Therefore, you need to be really careful not to overdo it when you're eating barbecued foods, because a surprising amount of your caloric intake will come just from the sauce that your dish is smothered in. Garlic bread may be delicious, but it's a high-carbohydrate food. It's also slathered in butter and usually salt. You may be tempted to eat an entire garlic bread loaf, but if you care about your health, you'll want to reconsider. According to The Nest, just 1 slice of garlic bread can contain 150 calories, which is pretty high for something you're probably eating as a side to a full meal. SF Gate suggests cutting back on the carbs when possible, and garlic bread is a great place to start. It may surprise you to learn that many sports drinks can contain just as much sugar as energy drinks and sodas. University of Michigan Health says sports drinks offer little nutritional value, and because of the added sugar, they can actually lead to weight gain. Sports drinks may help with hydration, but considering all the other things they contain, a better choice would be just to drink water. Fruit snacks are more than a little misleading. They actually contain little to no fruit, but do tend to have quite a lot of sugar. Welch's fruit snacks, for example, have 15 grams of sugar in each pouch. As the Food Network puts it, they're basically just sugar and dyes. In other words, this is not the healthy snack you might have imagined. Looking for a fruit snack? Just grab some fruit.
Fruit-flavored snacks? What's wrong with these people? There's barely any fruit in there.
Swordfish has the same problem as tuna. It's near the top of the food chain, so it has ample opportunity to bioaccumulate loads of mercury before it's caught, filleted, and served up on a plate. Swordfish can also carry dangerous toxins called organochlorines that may be harmful to human health, according to the World Wildlife Fund. So even if you only have swordfish once or twice a year, you might want to consider choosing an alternative even for those special occasions. The health benefits and risks of chocolate have been highly debated over the years. However, it's undeniable that processed chocolate contains sugar. Unless you're eating very bitter chocolate that is mostly cacao beans, most of the chocolate you'll find on supermarket shelves is not healthy. The British Heart Foundation says that the sugar and saturated fat found in chocolate can contribute to weight gain and heart disease. According to Insider, there are a lot of reasons to avoid white rice as a side or complement for your main course. Harvard Medical School has suggested that white rice has a similar effect on the body as eating table sugar. It's also bleached, and though it's a staple all around the world, it's not as nutritious as other varieties, such as brown rice. The main difference is that brown rice still has its outer layer of rice bran and the germ, giving it more nutrients and making it a better choice than white rice. If you've ever tasted beef jerky, you should already know that the salty flavor many people love doesn't exactly bode well for health. Beef jerky is highly processed and often contains nitrates to help preserve it for long periods of time. As we've seen in other processed meats, these nitrates can contribute to cancer risk. According to Livestrong, 1 ounce of beef jerky can contain over 1,700 milligrams of sodium, which is close to your daily limit. If beef jerky is your go-to snack, you ought to consider switching to something healthier. Although fruit in general is healthy, fruit cans in a heavy syrup can contain, unsurprisingly, a good deal of added sugar. The Food Network says that canned fruits, such as pears, can have almost twice the calories and sugar as fresh fruits. Some brands of canned fruits also contain artificial colors. Although they may work in a pinch if fresh foods aren't an option, you want to stick with fresh as much as possible. Cake is a tasty treat, and so long as you're only indulging in a small piece of cake on your birthday or perhaps a few times a year, you should be fine. But keep in mind that cake is high in sugar and basically contains no nutritional benefits.
What?
One Wegmans sheet cake, for example, has more than 300 calories and 30 grams of sugar per slice. Livestrong suggests that a large portion of the calories and sugar are in the frosting, so going without that topping can make the cake at least a little healthier. You could also consider a birthday fruit salad instead if you want to go for a healthier choice. Instant ramen has a reputation for being unhealthy, and it should come as no surprise to learn that the reputation isn't entirely unwarranted. According to Keck Medicine, instant ramen has been linked to an increased risk of stroke, liver damage, and heart disease, thanks to the sodium and saturated fats it contains. Instant noodles are often preserved with a petroleum-based product called TBHQ, as well as other additive ingredients that may be harmful to health. It might be cheap and easy in the short term, but you end up paying for ramen in the long run. Whether you sweeten your iced tea with sugar or artificial sweeteners, you're not doing your health any favors by drinking it. Sweet tea obviously has way more calories than unsweetened tea, around 70 or more per 8-ounce serving. Since it's pretty easy to gulp down several glasses on a hot day or while dining in a restaurant, that adds up fast.
So I'll take the tea without the covert diabetes delivery mechanism, please.
The caffeine in the tea adds up too, which can sneak up on you since iced tea doesn't feel like an especially caffeinated drink. Cherry, apple, blueberry, fruit pies are a favorite dessert for many of us. They are also unfortunately very high in sugar, as most desserts are. And packaged pies or frozen tend to contain highly processed fruit fillings that pack in a lot of calories. The Food Network says that one slice will typically have more than 400 calories and could contain hydrogenated oils. Also, these sugar-rich fruit fillings can contribute to tooth decay. Jalapeno poppers are a little bit of spice and a whole lot of nice, but they represent yet another fried food, and we know what that means. One order of poppers from Carl's Jr. has enough calories and fat to make a dietitian faint, and unfortunately, making them at home isn't necessarily any better. One recipe from the Spruce Eats actually has worse nutrition facts than the fast food version, with 392 calories and 29 grams of fat per serving. Deviled eggs are a taste of home for many of us. You might confuse these sides with health food because they're still just eggs redistributed into a more palatable form. Surely eggs aren't bad for you, right? Well, for starters, if you're watching your cholesterol, they're probably something to avoid on principle. And the added salt and mayo has the unfortunate side effect of turning a simple hen fruit into a petri dish of fat and sodium. If you limit yourself to just 1 or 2, you'll be fine. Just don't take a crack at a whole platter of them. Most of us are more concerned about the health effects of a shark eating us, but it's still a dish you can find at some seafood restaurants. And it's probably one you should think twice about, thanks to our old friend mercury. High concentrations of mercury are often found in large, predatory fish, according to the NRDC, and cannot be removed. CNN warns that ingesting too much mercury can lead to blindness, and in some cases, death. So stick to the old wisdom. Don't feed the sharks, and don't feed on the sharks. Marshmallows are a mix of sugar, corn syrup, and gelatin that's whipped up to form a light, airy structure. Chemical and Engineering News offers a playful description as, "A marshmallow is basically a foam that's stabilized by gelatin." Essentially, they're a bit of a non-food and contain high amounts of sugar without offering much nutritional benefit at all. So long as you eat them in moderation, you won't do too much damage, but keep in mind that the handful of calories in each one can add up quickly. Is it cheating to include fried Oreos on a list of unhealthy foods? Oreos are bad enough, but when you take one, dip it in batter, and fry it, you're clearly making a next-level calorie bomb. Of course, they taste amazing, but you should eat these very rarely, if ever. They're high in calories, trans fat, and all the other terrible and unhealthy things you find in fried foods. Built Lean says that just 5 fried Oreos will have nearly 900 calories, 48 grams of fat, and more than 50 grams of sugar. The Baltimore Sun suggests that perhaps we should consider each cookie to be its own serving. Twinkies are one of those quintessential food items you might think of when you imagine what processed food looks like, but sometimes there's just nothing else that'll scratch that unique itch.
I could use a Twinkie.
And these treats from Hostess are indeed unique, consisting of a cake sponge outer shell with a white creamy center. These are basically just sugar, fat, and calories, yet they remain popular as ever. Food Matters calls Twinkies a health hazard, citing the fact that only 5 of a Twinkie's 37 ingredients are recognizable as food. So maybe save these for the apocalypse. With that list of preservatives, they aren't going bad anytime soon.
Snowballs. Yeah. Snowballs! Where's the Twinkies?
As delicious as it is on pizza, pepperoni is, unfortunately, a cured meat that's high in saturated fat, sodium, and nitrates. SF Gates says that eating pepperoni can lead to high cholesterol and increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. The saturated fat in pepperoni can also lead to cognitive decline and infertility, according to the Harvard School of Public Health. If you can't resist eating pizza, you ought to at least skip this particular topping. Honey buns are a well-known treat that you'll find at most grocery stores and gas stations, but they contain a worrying number of chemicals and additives, some of which are potentially dangerous. CBS News reports that honey buns from Little Debbie contain a chemical called azodicarbonamide, and though it's FDA-approved and considered unharmful, it's also used in the production of yoga mats and shoe soles. Aside from the chemical controversy, you do well to avoid them based solely on the nutrition facts. They're super high in sugar and contain no significant nutritional value. Spam is a processed meat you might recognize as the punching bag of the food world. Anytime weird, unhealthy, or mystery foods are brought up, Spam tends to get a mention. It's not totally without merit though. Like the other cured meats on this list, it contains sodium nitrite. As a food, it's low in nutritional value, according to Healthline, and has high levels of fat, calories, and sodium that make it a poor choice for a meal. Crunchy packaged pretzels might not seem too bad for you, but they're little more than carbohydrates and sodium. Plus, many of us will just sit and mindlessly eat handfuls of pretzels without considering how much we're going through. According to Healthline, pretzels are best consumed occasionally, as they don't contain many beneficial nutrients and will increase your intake of carbs and sodium. Try to limit your pretzel intake, even if you're at a bar or munching on snack mix. Whipped cream and other whipped toppings are generally pretty unhealthy. Whipped cream is high in calories. Just 2 tablespoons has 100 calories and 10 grams of fat, according to the Food Network. Store-bought whipped topping also tends to be made with hydrogenated oils and high fructose corn syrup. Though it tastes good, whipped cream is a sugary treat and ought to be used sparingly. When you get right down to it, cookies are basically sugar, butter, and flour. That's not a great start, and that's when you make them in your kitchen. Packaged cookies like Chips Ahoy and Famous Amos have about a dozen additional ingredients. According to Healthline, processed cookies can lead to weight gain and high blood pressure, but it's not all doom and gloom. As with most of these foods, cookies are probably just fine in moderation.
Take a cookie. I promise by the time you're done eating it, you'll feel right as rain.